Welcome to This Explainer. We're jumping right into the 2026 heavyweight title fight of the tech world today. We're going to unpack the latest spec sheets, expert reviews, and in-depth teardowns to see exactly how the two absolute titans of the mobile industry stack up. Apple's iPhone 17 Pro Max and Samsung's Galaxy S26 Ultra.
So, let's kick things off with the big question that's been on everyone's mind. Is Apple's incredibly hyped 2026 flagship genuinely a superior phone when it comes to raw capability? Or is that much talked about new internal vapor chamber just literally keeping the phone from overheating while it desperately tries to keep pace with Samsung?
We've got a ton of ground to cover. We'll be walking through the specs and key features, the design and display battle, the whole AI assistant era, cameras and battery life, and finally, teardowns and thermal management.
All right, diving straight into Section 1, Specs and Key Features. It all starts right here. The foundation of Apple's newest device is completely driven by the highly anticipated iOS 26 and the brand new A19 Pro chip. This little piece of silicon is essentially the brain of the whole operation, and it dictates not just how fast your apps open, but how well the phone handles the massive demands of modern on-device AI.
Now, you really have to look at these numbers to grasp the sheer power Apple packed in this year. The A19 Pro is built on a cutting-edge 3-nanometer architecture, but the real game changer is the memory. They've paired that processor with a massive 12 gigabytes of RAM and up to 1 terabyte of NVMe storage. You know, Apple has historically been pretty stingy with RAM, but for 2026, this upgrade was absolutely vital. It gives the phone the breathing room it needs to process complex AI tasks entirely locally, no waiting on a cloud server, totally private, and it happens instantly.
But of course, processing power is only half the story when we're talking about a flagship phone. Let's shift gears and look at Apple's new camera hardware, because they've actually made a massive philosophical shift that photographers have been demanding for years.
Okay, so here's the crucial takeaway. Apple has finally brought a consistent 48-megapixel resolution across all three of its rear lenses. Think about what that actually means for your photos. In the past, jumping from your main lens to ultra-wide meant taking a really noticeable hit in image quality, because you were dropping to a lower-res sensor. Not anymore. Whether you're shooting on the 24mm wide lens with its fast f1.6 aperture, zooming in with the 100mm periscope telephoto for that 4x optical zoom, or capturing a landscape with the 13mm 120-degree ultra-wide, you get full 48-megapixel detail every single time. It's just a wonderfully seamless experience.
Moving right along to Section 2, the design and display battle.
It is genuinely wild to see how different their approaches to displays are this year. Apple is going all in on visibility and toughness. They've introduced Ceramic Shield 2 glass, which is ridiculously scratch-resistant, and the screen gets blindingly bright, peaking at 3,000 nits with a new anti-reflective coating. You could practically read a novel on it at the beach at noon. But then you look at Samsung, and they've introduced something completely different. The Flex Magic Privacy Display. With a simple toggle in your settings, the S26 Ultra physically alters its viewing angles. Straight on, it looks gorgeous and vibrant. But if you're looking at it from an angle, like the guy sitting next to you on the subway, the screen looks completely blacked out. For commuter privacy, that is absolutely huge.
Now, when it comes to how these things actually feel in your pocket, Samsung takes a massive lead. The Galaxy S26 Ultra measures an incredibly thin 7.9 millimeters. It's the thinnest Ultra they've ever made. The iPhone 17 Pro Max is noticeably thicker at 8.75 millimeters. That said, we do have some common ground here. Both companies finally ditched the heavy titanium frames we saw over the last few years and went back to good old heat-dissipating aluminum. Samsung even rounded off those famously sharp corners, so both of these phones are way more comfortable to hold during long scrolling sessions.
Let's slide into Section 3, the AI assistant era.
All right, this is where things get a bit sci-fi, because we're looking at two entirely distinct AI philosophies for 2026. Apple's iOS 26 equips Siri with what they're calling on-screen awareness. So Siri can actually see what you're looking at. If your friend texts you a flight number, you just say, "Add this to my calendar," and Siri seamlessly extracts the data and schedules it. Samsung's One UI 8.5, though, it takes things a step further with Now Nudge. Now Nudge doesn't wait for you to ask. It's totally proactive. It studies your habits. It might just pop up on a Friday afternoon and say, "Hey, want me to book a table at that Italian place?" just because it noticed you're checking out their menu hours ago. And reviewers are really noticing this contrast. Uswitch completely hit the nail on the head in their review, pointing out that the S26 Ultra genuinely feels like a proactive assistant, while the iPhone still requires, a fair amount of handholding. Now, the good news is that whether you have the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 in the Samsung or the A19 Pro in the Apple, AI lag is basically a thing of the past. No more loading spinners. But as it stands right now, Samsung offers a much more anticipatory, automated vibe, while Apple's insanely powerful system is still waiting on your green light.
Up next, Section 4, Cameras and Battery Life. We touched on Apple's 48-megapixel consistency earlier, and when you pair that with their new 8x optical quality zoom, the iPhone is arguably the ultimate tool for reliable daytime shots. But when the sun sets, Samsung really steals the show. The S26 Ultra features a massive f1.4 aperture on its main lens that physically allows the sensor to just drink in ambient light, giving you these remarkably sharp, vibrant nighttime photos. If you go to a lot of concerts or shoot in low light, it's a dream. Plus, they still have that absolutely staggering 100x zoom, which lets you pull out details from distances the iPhone literally can't even touch. Apple claps back hard when it comes to battery life, though. The extreme efficiency of that 3nm A19 Pro chip lets the iPhone 17 Pro Max hit a jaw-dropping 39 hours of continuous video playback. To put that into perspective, heavy users, streaming over 5G, using GPS, taking video calls, are literally getting to the end of the day with more than 30% battery left. We are officially in 2-day battery territory here, basically kissing battery anxiety goodbye for good. Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5, Teardown and Thermal Management. To keep up with all those intense AI processing tasks without melting in your hand, Apple finally built a dedicated vapor chamber into the iPhone. And the mechanics of it are actually super cool. The chamber sits right on top of the A19 Pro chip. As the chip heats up, it pushes that thermal energy into the chamber, which holds a tiny drop of water. That water rapidly boils into steam, which absorbs the heat. The steam then travels through this microscopic lattice structure to the cooler edges of the phone's aluminum frame, condenses back into liquid water, and repeats the cycle. It's essentially a self-contained mini water cooling loop right there in your pocket. And the proof is in the pudding. The results are totally undeniable. iFixit ran some heavy benchmarks under a thermo camera, and the previous iPhone 16 Pro Max hit 37.8 degrees Celsius, and actually had to throttle its performance just to keep from cooking itself. But the new iPhone 17 Pro Max, thanks to that vapor chamber, maxed out at only 34.8 degrees. That's a full 3 degrees cooler under max load. And the best part? Zero throttling. Your AI tools and heavy games just keep running at peak speed, constantly. Digging deeper into the teardown, Apple made some pretty interesting engineering choices. They actually walked back last year's dual-entry design, which means removing the delicate screen is mandatory for internal repairs again. But they made up for it where it counts most, the battery. They added this brand new metal battery tray. Instead of being glued down with those awful stubborn pull tabs that break and degrade, the tray is secured with standard Torx Plus screws. It makes swapping a dead battery infinitely safer and easier down the line. So despite the screen hurdle, iFixit still gave it a very respectable 7 out of 10 for repairability. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought. Looking at the absolute peak of mobile tech in 2026, what does the ultimate smartphone actually look like to you? Is it Samsung's proactive vision, a phone that guards your privacy from onlookers and anticipates what you need before you even realize you need it? Or are you drawn to Apple's vision, a refined, incredibly durable device relying on brilliant thermal engineering to quietly, coolly, and reliably get you through 2 solid days of use? The choice is definitely a tough one. Thanks so much for joining me to unpack this, and keep exploring.